Do you want to
Yeah.
talk like real quick with a Muslim dude about whether or not verses of the Quran like can be 100% condemn a person to committing violent acts or?
Sure, I don't mind having that conversation.
Okay.
I will admit 100% I'm not particularly well informed of this subject, so I might defer a lot to him on this specific
Yeah,
case
that's
because
fine. That's fine.
I didn't study it like I studied the Bible.
Yeah, sure. That's cool. Hold on. I'm gonna drag him in and then I'll be right back 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, the religious craze. He's coming out today, Mojo. All right. God damn
Oh,
it.
what's up, guys?
Okay, I'll be right back.
no.
1 sec. You guys can start.
Wait, you're leaving? What the fuck? You're missing all the action.
Just, I've heard your fucking Muslim apologia before. Okay, I'll be right back. 1 sec. Go for it.
Damn, okay. Okay. So first of all, let's preface this with what's your name, by the way?
My name is Lauren Fanatic.
Okay, you can call me Mojo alone. So let's give you the same treatment Destiny gives me always in debates. So at any point, if you want to interrupt me, if I misinterpret your point, or if you want to add something or anything like that, you can do it.
Okay.
So
Likewise.
I opened an editor and put some points in you talked about. I don't know what you want to start with.
Well, okay,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
point that I was making to Destiny is that Muslims in general support Sharia law, and the Sharia law does have some parts of it that are inherently violent. Would you agree with that point?
Muslims, I would say all Muslims support Sharia law. That's correct. What parts exactly would you consider inherently violent?
Stoning people for doing things that they shouldn't have done.
Awesome. How do you how much do you know about these types of things that most people know about in the West? These punishments about stoning, about whatever. These are called in Sharia are called hududs.
Sure.
They are like less than 1% of the whole concept of Sharia, of the Sharia, right?
Sure. But they're there.
Yeah, let me finish my point, please. How you arrive at stoning a person for adultery or for whatever is laid out like it's so extreme to reach that point that it's nearly impossible to achieve. In the first 1,000 years of Islam, and in my opinion, if you would ask any religious person, a Christian, a Jew, or someone, when was the time that your religion was performed as optimally as possible? Everyone would say in the time of their prophet, correct? Like you would say in the time of Jesus, the best Christians lived, and a Jew would say in the time of Moses, and a Muslim would say in the time of Muhammad, correct?
No, not exactly.
Okay, if you don't agree with that, that's...
Well, I mean, like just historically, that's not true for Christianity. Christianity actually started booming after Jesus.
No, I'm not saying the amount of followers. I'm saying the followers that followed that religion followed it as perfectly as they could.
It wasn't really an established, but this is nuance. Okay, sure, I'll just concede your point, but it's that wasn't how Christianity.
Okay,
different.
like my point is, in the time of the prophet, that's the time where Islam was practiced as perfectly as possible. And as time goes on, people change stuff, or like they do some wrong things, or don't follow it as closely as they did at that time. So let's go back to the stoning point. To get to that point, there are like so many criteria to reach that point that it's nearly impossible. In the first 1,000 years of Islam, there was not a single, like after the time of the Prophet, there was one incident in the time of the Prophet where a person came voluntarily 3 times and he sent her back. There was a woman, a prostitute, I think, and she wanted to be stoned herself. She came 3 times, he sent her back 3 times, and after that, they did it. But after that point, in 1,000 years, there was not a single incident of stoning. So,
okay.
so the fact that you say it's like you put it in a way that it's practiced super easily, that as soon as you see someone doing it or whatever, that the punishment is like following immediately or something, that's incorrect. So the punishments are more as a deterrent, if that's the correct English word, for people. And they are also in the Bible, stoning for adultery and stuff. So I mean, you don't really have a leg to stand on
No, I do. Let me interject here really quickly. I think me and Destiny went over there. I don't know how long you've been in this conversation, but Destiny and I went over specifically the New Testament versus the Old Testament, and this happens to be
Yeah, I know.
this.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that you said that
Okay,
the New Testament is the Old Testament, like Christians don't follow the Old Testament because
sure.
Jesus came to abolish the old
Not
or
to
whatever.
abolish, but yeah, but sure. Like it's the New Testament usurps the Old Testament, and the
Yeah,
laws,
but I'm
the law
pretty sure
specifically is not there
Jesus said he didn't come to abolish it. He came to affirm the Old Testament.
to fulfill. But sure, yeah. But then I also went into several examples. I only read like a few that specifically referred to the law and how we're not to practice the law and how we're not under the law. It's the New Testament is replete. It's full of scriptures everywhere that clearly indicate that we're not to practice the Old Testament. Like it's
All right, if you want to keep out the Old Testament completely, then what's the punishment for homosexuality according to the New Testament? Is it even a sin according to you?
what's the punishment for homosexuality?
I feel like homosexuality is only referenced. I want to say it's in Deuteronomy, isn't it?
No, it's also referenced in the New Testament.
Is it? I thought
yeah.
it was either Deuteronomy
Romans,
or
the first
Leviticus.
Romans, the first chapter, and as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, he gave them over to a reprobate mind. I'm doing this from memory. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. It's Romans, the first chapter, where they reference it. And then it says, and then the women also burned in their lust to one another, committing acts, receiving their due punishment, which was in reference. It was basically that it was inconvenient, and that like there's no, we as human beings are not allowed, are never instructed to issue out any punishment. Like it's just there is no punishment that human beings would be giving in that way. The only sin would be that they're homosexuals in that regard. Then it would be that they're left to their own devices, and that at the end, in the afterlife, they would receive their punishment. There is no actual codified punishment for homosexuals in the New Testament, supposedly enacted by any human beings here. That's not a thing.
Oh, okay. So if two homosexuals would have sex in front of an evangelical church in America, the pastors there wouldn't have any problem with it?
I think they would have a problem with any human beings having sex in front of a judge for any reason. That's a private act. But no, that there would not be any codified punishment because of the fact that they're homosexual. No, if that's what you're implying, no.
Okay, that's the first time I heard that. Okay.
That's factual. I'm not making that up. I'm not being disingenuous, I promise you. That's just not a thing.
Yeah, okay. There's a similar concept in Islam, by the way, what you said, that the act of homosexuality itself is dealt with in the afterlife, but as soon as it's publicly practiced, it becomes, like in Islam, you differentiate between, you could say, sins against the society and sins against God or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sins against the society are punished in the society, for example, murder or stealing or whatever. Mm-hmm. You have judges and whatever, they have like a judicial system, and they deal with that. And sins against God, like ascribing partners to him or something, believing in multiple gods or whatever, that stuff is dealt with in the afterlife.
The way that we talked about this, at least in school, or I think maybe the whole Catholic Church might say this, is that like you hate the sin, not the sinner. So homosexuality is wrong.
That's a similar concept in Islam. But as soon as the act is practiced in public, it doesn't become a sin between the persons and God. It becomes a sin in the society as well, right?
And yeah, you would be publicly punished for that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Destiny before, like how you would reach a punishment for homosexuality, and I researched it even more. And so to actually punish someone for homosexuality in public is even more ridiculous. So that's the point I'm bringing up there. The whole hududs are just deterrents, not really stuff that actually is acted upon, right? So you have to. I said it before, and the whole chat was memeing and liked it a lot. But for a homosexual to be punished, there need to be 4 witnesses that actually witness the penetration in public, and the persons that witness it are described in Arabic as mu'minun. It's not just Muslims; it's pious Muslims. So imagine, like, I don't know, like old man with like super long grown beards walking in public, and 4 of them at the same time, like keeping their eyes on the act. It's so ridiculous, and other criteria as well. I can look it up if you're interested. But that's like that's so extreme, like for it to happen, and they have to testify in court and stuff. It's just like it's set up so extremely that it possibly can never happen, right? It's just a deterrent for the people to not do it.
Let me explain a few things first. When you're talking about the fact that during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, that stuff didn't happen, right? And say that that's the purest form, but I don't think that that's the way things work. I think most of the time you need to have political influence in order for these kind of laws, because you're always going to be living in a society, right? So you had Judaism, and the reason why Judaism was successfully implemented and the reason why it was practiced to the letter of the law by the Jewish people is because they were a segregated and isolated individual group of people. They weren't necessarily assimilating in society, but when you started taking them to different places, when they started integrating with the Roman society and whatnot, and when during that integration, then no, they didn't practice the law exactly the way it should be, because you couldn't, because now you have codified law preventing you from practicing it that way. So yes, at the beginning, at the onset of the Muslim religion, of the Muslim faith, then yes, when there are small numbers, then obviously you're not going to have the ability to even commit these kind of, stonings and whatnot. You just can't do it. It would require you to have a significant amount of people, because if you were to do it in those situations, kind of people would consider that as murder, and then you have to deal with the political punishment for that.
Yeah, I get your point, buddy. But as I said earlier, like the punishment was never acted upon in the first 1,000 years of Islam. So I mean, it's pretty clear.
I don't know if that's true.
I can look it up if you want. Like
sure.
Like I never talked really to a Christian before, so I don't have all my sources ready. But I mean, that's pretty a clear indicator that it's actually a deterrent, not an actual punishment willy-nilly, right? Yeah. If you want to move on to the next point, or if you want to add something to that.
I want to point out something really quickly. The punishment is there, and these extra requirements, right? These specific things that you're saying are required, they're not codified. They're not written that way. If you're choosing to interpret it that way, that's fine. However,
no, it's not a choice. No. Hold on, buddy. It's not a choice.
What I was just saying is it's not written. That part about you having to have 4 witnesses, that's not written.
You know that Muslims, at least Sunni Muslims, which may make up like over 90% of all Muslims in the world, don't take just the Quran, right? You know that. I'm pretty sure, right? They take the Hadith. There are 6 big books. The biggest 2 of them are from Bukhari and Muslim.
Sure.
And like they take that into account to interpret the Quran correctly, right? So not a single person like reads just the Quran and interpret it like just for themselves. There are scholars that do that their whole life, like studying Islam and stuff and writing books about like single verses and stuff. I mean, it's not an easy thing for a layman to do. That's why you need to go to an authoritative figure and read up on that stuff. So I mean, it's most Muslims that are educated know about this thing. And like I said earlier, these hududs, which people in the West love, like talking about, these punishments are like such a small part of the Sharia, which is ridiculous to give it so much time compared to the other things. Like Sharia is like synonymous in the West, in my opinion, for like, I don't know, barbarism or punishment. Or I mean, if you want to,
bro. Here's the deal. Look, I know the Old Testament, right? I know Leviticus, and I know those scriptures, and I do know that not all of it is about punishment. Some of it's just simply like being unclean. Like, hey, guess what? If you sleep with this woman while she's on the rag, you're unclean for X amount of days, right? Like the stuff is there. Washing your hands before you're eating, all those kind of traditions. If you committed this sin and you don't sacrifice for it, you got to wait outside the village for X amount of time, so on and so forth. A lot of it had to do with these are the foods you can't eat, and it wasn't like we're gonna stone you if you eat these foods. We're just telling you right now that those things are. You can't eat them, and so on and so forth. So I get that not all of it is specifically about the violence. However, the only thing that I did say, which I think is factually grounded, is the fact that there is injunction for violence within Sharia law, that the injunction is there. And maybe like, okay, the extreme of automatically killing somebody is not there, but the 80 lashes is there. Like, and it's,
Yeah, but I mean, the requirements for them to happen, you have to take them into account as well.
Sure. So
I mean, you earlier
and catch them and then say, hey, we saw them. We're waiting to see when but it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the injunction is there, is what I'm saying. So the injunction is there for violence. Like whether or not you want to start trying to, and this is why like I was kind of wary about having this conversation, is because there's obviously going to be things that I'm not particularly well informed about, and I don't want to put myself out on a limb and make like an egregious error and say something stupid like, oh yeah, this is whatever, when I'm not 100% informed of the subject.
You already did earlier when you talked about jizya, but we can go into that later. But let's finish this point. I mean, if you want to play that game where you just look at the Quran and take it literally, I can play that game with the New Testament as well, buddy.
Oh, so, you could. I would.
Yeah, let me read you a verse. Let me read you a verse, and you can explain that. Okay. Jesus said, and these enemies of mine, who are unwilling for me to rule over them, bring them here and slay them in front of me. Jesus said.
That's not in the Bible. That's not.
It isn't. Oh, you don't know your Bible.
Listen.
It's in Luke 19, verse 27. So if you don't know your Bible, I mean, me as a Muslim, apparently I know your Bible better than you. So, but what I did there is I did the same thing you did. I picked like a verse out of context, and it looks violent, and it looks. Jesus said, "What? Bring people in front of me and kill them?" Oh no, it doesn't work like that, right? That's the same thing you're doing with that. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Read. One second. I just need to find it really quickly. I got it on my phone. Let me see that. Second.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time. But that's the thing. Like Christians think they know their Bible in and out. Nothing in the New Testament about violence or whatever. But yeah, apparently sometimes there is if you take it out of context. And that's why I hate it when people do that to the Quran as well. Like, I'm pretty sure the verses you're going to bring up about the Quran, if you read the verses in front of them and after them, they make sense, and they are like, okay, they're just in terms of self-defense when states attack states or whatever. Because Islam is not a pacifist religion, not like you want to spin the New Testament to be. Islam allows states and people to defend themselves when they are attacked, right?
Oh yeah, wait. Oh man, dude, yeah.
Yeah, okay. you see how ridiculous that is. If I just read that verse alone, and not
I was going to say, but let me make
sure. And that's what you're doing, buddy.
Well, not exactly, but let me just make sure that we're on the same page here. So you would agree 100% that there are literally zero injunctions in context to do violence in the Bible, right? Like, you agree with that point? And if you agree with that point, can you then say to me honestly that there are zero injunctions to do violence in the Quran? If that's the case, then I'm going to say that we're obviously the answer is no, right? I can
don't answer for me, mate. Don't answer.
Okay, then answer for me.
Whoa, I'm back. Whoa. Are we getting heated in here? What's going on?
I got ahead of myself.
We're chilling. We're best buddies. We are conspiring to go against atheist Stephen Cornell and destroy his stream.
It's gonna happen. No, but I'm basically saying, look. We can see that. Right? There are zero
let me answer your question, buddy.
Okay, go ahead.
So you have to define violence. If you define violence as unprovoked acts against people, that innocent people, then I don't agree with that. There's nothing in the Quran about calling violence against like civilians or against like.
Let me stop you. Look, because you're doing a straw man thing right here, right? Because I didn't define it that way, and I don't subscribe to proprietary definitions.
Go ahead, define it.
Violence is to do physical harm. Is physical harm or a threat of physical harm against another individual. Like, that's what violence is. But I can look it up. Let's define it. Let's look at the.
Well, you don't need to look up the actual. You just what definition do you want to use or whatever? Because
then there is violence in the Bible as well, as I linked you earlier, right?
Okay, so here we go. Behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill something or someone or something. That's the definition that I would like to use. And there are zero.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. I don't subscribe to proprietary definition, so that's what I'm going by. And so
then I agree with that. There is in the Quran. There's also in the Bible, yeah.
So wait, I'm sorry. I said that there are zero injunctions to do violence, to do what we just defined in the New Testament in any context. There are zero injunctions.
What about Luke 19 verse 27?
No, that wasn't an injunction to do violence.
What does injunction mean? I'm sorry.
Calling
people upon or what?
Well, injunction means an encouragement or an excuse to do something, like something causing something to happen. So in this case, what you did was you took a story. You said, hey, there was a dude one time, and this is what he said, and this is what happened. And he said, bring my enemy before me that I could slay them, right? So that's what happened there. He's telling a story, but there's never a time where he's saying, here is a case where you can commit violence, or encouragement. There we go.
Okay. Would you just a question?
Encouragement to do violence in the New Testament ever in context, not a single one. Would you agree with that statement?
I'm just saying now. I agree with that because I don't know the Bible as well as you. No,
Wait,
probably.
real quick. What was the chapter verse?
It was 19 and 27. Look, I'll just read you.
Well, here I'll go.
Yeah. So would you wait? What was my question? Fuck.
Really quickly, if I can, look, Luke 19 and 12. He said, a certain nobleman went to a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And then he goes on to tell the story about this nobleman. And it's all in one connected passage. He never stops talking. And they said unto him, Lord, he had 10 pounds. That's the 25th, blah, 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 blah. And then the 27th is where he says, but those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and let whatever. So that, it's clearly a story that he's talking about what happened, and it's clearly.
Yeah, but I told you, don't do that to me. I told you when I read it, like if people take quotes out of context, they look shit, right? And that's my claim that you do with the Quran as well. And okay, I remember your question now. Do you think do you define self-defense or calling someone to defend themselves as violence as well, as injunction to violence as well? If your answer is yes, then I would say yes, there's violence in the Quran according to that definition. Sure, because in the Quran it calls people to defend themselves when they are attacked. Yeah, because it's not a pacifistic religion. You have to defend it.
Right, and that's not in the Bible. They actually specifically.
Okay, so the
Bible. Well,
that's
not in the Bible. Literally, like 95%. Yeah, but like 95% of Christians would feel like religiously justified in defending their families or defending their country. Like against an attacker.
Yeah, that would be my next question. If you're attacked, would you defend yourself, or according to the New Testament, because you don't take the Old Testament into account, you would just accept the beating, or what?
Let me explain to you what happens here. What happens is when you now I'm becoming a Christian apologist. That wasn't the purpose of the conversation, but I'm willing to do that. Okay, so what you happen, we obviously make a very clear distinction, right? Where Jesus, like when they were asking him about taxing. Right, and he was like, no, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, render to man the things that are man, and render to God the things that are God's. So it was Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render to God the things that are God's. We have always created a distinction between political advents and personal spiritual advents. And so in this regard, absolutely, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of Christians that have absolutely no problem with war, because I think even in myself, right, as a pacifist individual, I would look at it and say, it's not my place to push my agenda onto everyone else. I can only lead people to information. It's up to them to follow it however they choose to. Right? That's the only injunction that I do have.
Okay, yeah. That's nice.
So in that regard, absolutely, yes, we would understand that it is codified in the scripture, the ability for a nation to go to war, that they would do that. And there's a very clear distinction between individuals. Even in the Old Testament, if you want to go
so that there is then in the New Testament injunction to violence when it comes to states.
No, again, listen, I'm sorry, you misheard me. Let me finish.
Okay, I misheard.
You're jumping to a conclusion. I'll say this more clearly for you one more time. There are 0 injunctions to do violence in the New Testament, and I specifically referenced in the Old Testament that there were times that even though you had scriptures like the law, which said thou shalt not murder, right? That was the Greek word. It said, thou shalt not murder. But then he would go and say, hey, slaughter this entire group of individuals. But it's not a murder when it's something is done in a political organization. There's a very clear distinction there.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead. You can interrupt. Go ahead.
So you don't take the Old Testament into account for justification on your actions, correct? So you have to justify a state going to war or defending themselves according to the New Testament. How do you do that if you say that the New Testament doesn't contain any injunctions towards violence or self-defense, because we agree to the definition when we say that that's in the Quran as well. How do you justify a state defending themselves according only to the New Testament as a Christian?
According only to the New Testament as a Christian, we have to recognize that the political government is not us as individuals. Christianity only gives instructions to individuals. It only gives instructions to individuals, and they give instructions towards spiritual organizations such as churches specifically. So it has no references as to like whether or not there can be war. I know that he talked to the end of Jesus himself, or John the Baptist, spoke directly to the centurions and told the centurions themselves, hey, just so you know, like, what did he say? Do violence to no man. They asked him specifically, what can we do to be saved? He said, do violence to no man. That was to the individuals. He didn't go and say, and to the, to the chief of staff of the army or whatever the term is for that dude, the general, you can't do, no, that's not anywhere in there. Christianity only references the individuals. So yes, as an individual person, as an individual Christian person, I have to recognize that I do not have direct influence over the government. So in that regard, it is a separate entity that has the right to practice however it chooses to.
Yeah, I got your point. I got your point. So let me recap to make sure I understand correctly. According to the New Testament definition, or like understanding of yours of Christianity, there's no justification for an individual for injunction to violence against anyone. So, but a state is made out of individuals, and I'm pretty sure you would want to live in a Christian state or whatever, and that Christian state is attacked, which is made up of individuals. How would that state find the justification, because they only follow the New Testament like you, to defend themselves against anyone?
How would the state? Like, but this is the thing. Like, no one ever expect. Like, we recognize that we live in a secular world. We have to recognize that we'll always be the minority, right? So if that's the case, then yeah, if we're living in our own independent religion, I don't even know that the Bible ever told us to try to establish it. It didn't actually. We never had the dream of like.
Wait, Israel.
Let me just. You're talking about Israel again. We're not talking about New Testament. There you go. You can go there. In the Old Testament, sure.
Wait, Jesus came for the children of Israel only, right? You know that?
No, that's not true. That's not.
It's in the New Testament. He said, "I came for the children of Israel." Or whatever.
No. So listen. Okay. Well, let me just give it to you this way. Did Paul not say that Jesus came for both the Jews and the Gentiles?
Well, I mean, maybe. I only know that Jesus.
Did Jesus give the parable about the husbandman that was like doing the wedding and then say, hey, I'm inviting all these people, and none of my brother, none of them showed up. So then I went to the streets and said, hey, you, and I got the beggars and whatever, and then said, you guys can come to my wedding instead. You remember that?
Well, I know of a story in the Bible. I know of a story in the Bible where Jesus sat with his apostles, and a Gentile wanted to sit with them, and they said, no, I came only for the children of Israel, or something like that.
I need to see that context. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay.
I know there's a scripture where he was talking to a lady and he said, it's not good to give meat to the dogs. And she said, yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat at your table. And then he said, wow, I've never seen faith like this, not from Lazarus, blah, blah, blah. And so in practice, he even did it differently. Jesus' message his message, let's just put it this way. Go ye therefore teaching all nations. That right there in and of itself automatically means that it's clearly not referencing the idea that he's only talking about going to the Jews, right? These are Jesus' words himself. Go ye therefore teaching all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. Done, right? At this point, you have to concede that Jesus in his own verbiage 100% indicated that he was not only trying to go to the children of Israel. That's just not true, bro. Come on.
All right, man. I'm just. I'm sorry. I'm not educated enough in the Bible. I'm not. I actually just came here to defend Islam against your claims.
And look, I respect that. Look, and here's the deal. I understand, because I'm in the same position that you are, in the sense that if I want to start like talking about, which is why I was a little hesitant to do it in the first place, because at this point you could choose to, like, or even myself, I could choose to present to you an incredibly disingenuous argument, knowing that you don't have the actual truth, you don't have the knowledge that I do of the Bible, and then at this point you just got to hold it, right? Like, you just got to like accept, like, maybe he's telling the truth, right? Like, and it sucks. This kind of argument, it's really bad, because it really does, it plays in my integrity, right? If I have the integrity to never do that, then we're good. But if I don't, then I can just screw you over and just present completely like nonsensical stuff in the Bible that doesn't have any merit. So it does kind of suck. But I'm telling you with certainty, and I rarely use absolutes because of the fact that I hate being wrong. I really hate it with all my being. I'm saying with certainty, like unequivocally, there are zero injunctions to do violence in the New Testament. They just don't exist. Point blank, period, bro. Like, that's not like I
okay. You say
it doesn't exist.
But as a counter argument, I mean, you're talking a lot more than me, so I give you the time to talk even more now. Listen up. You say there are, though, injunctions in the Quran which call to violence, right? So can you name a few?
No, I can't name them offhand. I don't know the Quran by heart.
Just one, maybe?
Let me just ask you a question. Would you say, are you making the claim that there are no injunctions to do violence in the Quran?
As violence as we defined it earlier, which is falling under self-defense, I would say, yeah, there are the calling injunctions for self-defense, but not for unprovoked and offensive wars is prohibited in Islam. Like, yeah.
Okay, I'm asking. I'm not sure, so I'm asking this question. I'm not positive. I'm asking, just making sure that we're clear on that. Is there an injunction for violence for apostasy?
Injunction for violence against apostasy. So.
Is it telling you to kill apostates?
No, there is not.
Yeah, I don't see. I believe that there is. I just don't know. I don't have the information to that. I don't have anything to be able to quote it. I'm pretty sure it's in there, but I don't have it, and that's why I can't really make any ground in this argument because I'm not particularly well informed, and so otherwise I would have like a
I mean, you're coming with a pretty big claim though, like that the New Testament has no injunctions for violence and that the Quran is filled with them. And if I asked you,
I didn't say
one,
that. No, I did not say that it was filled with that at all. In fact,
didn't you say that earlier when you talked to Destiny? I may be mistaken. Okay.
No,
but you said there are ones, right?
Look, I would never ever make the statement that the Quran is filled with them because I have not read the entire Quran and I don't know that, and I would not go out on that.
Can you name just a single one? I mean, you seem pretty confident in your position, right? So you should be able to know at least one, right? It's not a big thing to ask. If you're coming so confidently into this talk, and you said you listened to an earlier YouTube video, I'm sorry if I'm coming off as like rude or something.
You're not. You're fine. It's okay. It's all right.
But you said you watched the earlier video, so you at least
the video I watched
was,
right? the video that I watched specifically was Destiny saying that that radical Muslim and radical Christianity were the same, and that's what I was arguing.
Well, to be clear, I never said they were the same. I mean, they're different.
Not the same. I'm sorry. I'm not. Yeah,
the central point that we disagree on is I don't really care about the source religious text. I don't care. I just care more about how its followers act. Is our big disagreement and continues to be.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah. I'm 100% have made the claim that I'm not particularly well informed on the Muslim religion. However, I am aware that those things exist. I don't want to just go on. I don't want to go on Google and then just look up. Where are the injunctions to do violence? I know that there are injunctions.
Do it, mate. Do it. I want
in
it.
Sharia law.
Give it to me.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Someone linked me something in my stream really quick. I'm gonna.
Shit.
This is.
Oh yeah, baby. Give it to me. I like it.
See, I don't know. I wish I had someone that I could trust that would be able to like vet this stuff. I don't want to just present to you something ridiculous like Luke 19:27 and just be like.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. So
you said the R word, by the way.
I'll Google it. I'll just Google it. Let me do it. I'll find it. Let me see. Apostasy, punishment. Quran.
No. Yeah. Okay. If you want to Google that, okay. Let's go ahead.
Let's do that.
Let's go to ask. What's the website that the right-wing website Ask Islam? Oh no, what is it called? Answer Islam or something like that. That's pretty funny. If you're coming with that point.
Dude. Okay, good. They have the scripture references.
You need to go up Destiny, by the way, to the flag, where you lit the flag. Such a noob, bro.
I need to go where?
Where you lit the flag, the black flag. And there are staircases down. You can go down there, and there's a ship you can take to go to the next act.
So I need to go north?
Yes. Northeast.
Okay. Oh, fuck, man.
Dang, yeah. See, I don't know, man.
I mean, if you want, we can talk like another time.
Quran 491, where it says you will find others who desire that they should be safe from you and secure from their own people. As often
Quran what verse? I'm sorry.
491. Again, I don't have the context for this. Maybe you can explain this to me. Let's just go here really quick. As often as they are sent back to the mischief, they get thrown into headlong. Therefore, if they do not withdraw from you and do not offer you peace and restrain their hands, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them. And against these, we have given you a clear authority.
That's one of the go-to verses for alt-righters and stuff when they talk about Islam. There's another verse
Figured,
also
see?
in the second surah. That's the exactly the same thing I did to you earlier when I read to you Luke, what was it? Luke 19 verse 27 or whatever, right? That's
Is
the
this a
exact same thing.
parable?
No, it's
Is
not.
it-
It's read the context of verse before it and the after it. And
Okay,
And-
I need to find it. I don't see. This is the thing. I don't know. The thing is, would you've already conceded for a fact though, given specific. Okay, there we go. Drop down argument. I don't know why I didn't go here from the beginning. You conceded the fact that under specific conditions, that and regardless of how ridiculous they are, that there are injunctions to do violence in Sharia law. But it takes like specific things. You need to see four people witnessing them in the act of it. For example, 4 people witnessing someone in the act of adultery. That can result in death, right?
buddy, I mean, if you want to define violence in that of a convoluted way or whatever, we can do it,
That's
and I
not
can say
convoluted
yes.
at all.
You
That's
can.
not-
You can. Let me
no.
finish. Let me finish. You can. I mean, I can say yes to make you happy if you want, but that at that point we are pretty far removed from the actual definition of violence, because at that point
No.
it's not like what I understand of violence is, in my opinion, like unprovoked or whatever, like acts
No.
or harm against someone or whatever. I mean, if you
So
want
like,
to
wait,
say
let
violence,
me step in here because this is kind of like a bait and switch in my opinion. So like when people make the claim that Muslims are violent, people aren't usually saying that like. First of all, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that in some countries, these types of things would only apply to other Muslims. I do know for a fact that there
That's
are
correct,
Muslims
yeah.
in certain countries. Now, in more extreme places, like maybe Saudi Arabia, they would say Sharia law ought to apply to everybody. But I'm pretty sure in places like Indonesia, they say that this should only be applied to other practicing Muslims, right? Muslims. So-
Sharia law by definition only applies to Muslims.
Sure,
Like,
but I'm pretty sure in more extreme places they're a little bit more adamant about enforcing it amongst the entire general population, like in Saudi Arabia, right? Like I don't think you can you be an a-religious person in Saudi Arabia?
as long as you're not actually an Arab person, yeah. I mean,
Really?
they have, they have people from Germany.
Well, not
engineers and
not
stuff.
like
They-
tourists or whatever, but like people can live there and be a citizen of Saudi Arabia and not be like a practicing Muslim. Like you'll be okay being gay and shit.
I mean, openly gay in the public, having sex on the street, probably.
Well, no,
not, but-
that's not what I mean. But like holding hands with a man and getting like gay married and being like
yeah,
living
yeah,
together
no,
is
yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know it, but like in Arab culture, at least in North Africa and in the Middle East as well, holding hands with a man isn't necessarily an act of like homosexuality or whatever.
Gotcha.
People do it, like.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
it's
Well,
not seen, it's-
regardless of that, typically the argument put forth is that like Muslims hate gay people, so they're literally going to go around the street like in droves, like searching for homosexuals to like mass murder. But if the actual claim is that like if 4 people witness another Muslim, committing an act of homosexuality or whatever, that person could be tried and convicted under Sharia court and maybe killed. Like that's pretty far removed from the initial claim of like roaming bands of like Muslims looking to kill people, right?
Okay, I want to say something really quickly.
Yeah.
I never said that. Number one, I never have included or I've never. That's not something that I've introduced into this conversation.
Okay, sure,
That
yeah,
would
that's
100%
possible.
Be a straw man. Number one. Number two, I want to also point out the fact that there's a very big difference when you start talking about the large majority of your population. Let me ask you a question really quick, and I need you to be honest. I don't, not you, Destiny, the other guy. So I'm sorry, I'm bad with names.
No problem.
In a Muslim majority country, like I don't know, whatever. In any country where Sharia law is actively practiced, where Muslims are the vast majority, would you, if someone was to sleep with someone else's wife, right? Like, or the wife was was committing adultery with a
Mhm.
non-Muslim person, and 4 people witnessed it. So would under Sharia law, are you saying that something would only happen to her and nothing would happen to him?
They would grill them and eat them and have a snack.
Come
No,
on.
I,
Good one.
So, according to Sharia law, if there are 4 witnesses and all the criteria are met, and I mean, the punishment would be like they would proceed with the punishment, right? But as I said earlier, like you wanna put me into that point, like
Wait,
that's
no,
let me talk a little bit too.
I haven't finished my
That's,
thought, though.
Wait, you asked me a question, no?
Go ahead. Sure. It was a leading question, so the answer is yes, right? And obviously, if the answer is yes, then that's perfectly example of what I'm talking about. Where
Yeah, but that's
incredibly
disingenuous,
specific to
buddy.
even-
Come on,
It is
that's
not.
the
I
same
have to-
thing. That's the same thing Darth Dawkins did to Ask Yourself like 2 days ago, where he wanted to pinpoint him on the word imagination. It's all down to your imagination. That's the thing you wanted to do to me right
No.
now, right? Yeah,
No.
it kind of feels that way because, as I told you earlier, in the first 1,000 years, there was not a single punishment that was like of adultery that was done, right? Because the people know, like the scholars and stuff, that it's a deterrent. It's not actually. It can only happen if someone willingly wants it to happen to them, right? Doing it in public in front of like a large crowd and whatever. And that's not only the only criteria, right? There are the 4 witnesses. There are other things as well. Like the
Sure.
people can be crazy and whatever, and you have to prove that, and they have to admit to it. And there's so many things. So it's not only that point. So for all the criteria to actually like fulfill, it's so ridiculous. Like it can, in my opinion, never really happen. So to put it that way, that if they see them, then punishment is stoning or whatever. It's so ridiculous, man.
Okay, so here's the point that I wanted to get. Like, I'm only able to reach these points by extrapolating the things that you're saying to me right now. This isn't something that I'm prepared for or I studied for. I can do that, and we could have a conversation at another time. And I guarantee you that I will have the proof that I need to, because I'm pretty sure historically what you're saying is inaccurate. But to that point, let me just make sure that the point that the point is here now. At this point, that Destiny, in this situation, this is why I said it's really hard to have this kind of conversation, because someone can choose to be disingenuous.
Yeah, of course.
In this situation, you're saying specifically that Sharia law is only supposed to be applied to Muslims. Using your own examples against him, I had to pull out from here and say, wait, great. Now that we have the criteria established, now let me use this. Given this criteria, and you have a non-Muslim practicing person, or a non-Muslim individual, and they both would be punished in this situation. So while you want to say, Sharia law is only really for Muslims, no, because it also applies to non-Muslim individuals inside of your, like that. That's just the way the law works.
Wait, where did we get to non-Muslim individuals?
Because when I just explained to him, like, hey, okay, so given the context that would be required for someone to receive lashes in Sharia law for adultery, if one of the practicing participants is not a Muslim, would they also receive the same punishment? And the answer is yes. So you have a Muslim woman having an affair with a non-Muslim man, and in that case, given the criteria that she would receive punishment, both of them would receive punishment according to Sharia. In the same sense, and it's really parallel. The Muslim faith is very parallel to Judaism in a lot of ways, which is why I know that this happens to be the case. In Leviticus, in the same sense, it's not only for people that are Jewish people. If you catch 2 people committing adultery within the confines of the city, those people get bodied. If you catch homosexuals within the confines of the city, those people get bodied. And it's not a matter of only for the people that are practicing. While you would say, yes, the laws are written for his people. There are scriptures that say that. It doesn't change the fact that people who happen to be within the confines of those perimeters also would reap those issues. And if the majority of the population are there, then those people would all fall under Sharia law, whether they were practicing Muslims or not. And I'm only able to extrapolate that from what we've had in the conversation thus far.
So what I know historically is if other minorities live under Muslim rule, and we can go to the point of jizya, which you brought up earlier, which was complete crap, by the way. Under Muslim rule, if minorities live there, they have their own judicial system, their own like I don't know how to say it, political system in some sorts, right? So we saw that with Jews. We saw that with the Copts in Egypt, which are still like they still exist today, which is like a testament to like Muslims allowing minorities to live there, right, and not forcing them to convert, like you said, which was the case in Kosovo. So yeah, I mean, if they commit crimes under themselves or whatever, they deal with them themselves. Sharia is not Sharia is not like taking action against them, but as when like a non-Muslim and a Muslim commit a crime together, which falls under Sharia, I actually don't know what would happen. I have to look that up, and I can tell you what the answer to that is. Yeah, but the point you said to Destiny earlier about jizya, you said that in you can repeat your point if you want, so I don't mischaracterize it. Can you do it right now?
What I was basically saying is that that there is it is jizya. Okay, good. I wasn't positive. That there is a tax that Muslim impose on non-Muslim individuals, and historically that happened in Kosovo, and that it's justified in the Quran for them to tax people, that are not Muslim, and that happened. And then as a result of that tax, plenty of people end up converting to Islam because it's actually unlivable
Oh, it's unlivable. All right,
777
so
millimeters
that
of
shows how
bodies
much
hit
Oh,
the
actually
I'm sorry,
floor.
our
sorry, I'm livable. Look, I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. 'cause
Wowie.
Let me correct myself because I know you're gonna jump on that. Let me put it this way: it is an
Wowie.
unnecessary. Look, okay, great. If I can correct myself, it is an unnecessary strain on individuals financially that causes them and gives them an impetus to want to convert to Christian, to Islam, and it has happened historically multiple times in different countries. Is that
Okay.
factual?
Nope.
Which part is wrong?
Pretty much a lot of it. Let me tell you what it actually is, okay? So jizya is a tax which non-Muslims have to pay under a country that rules under Sharia. That point you got correct. The point where you said it's unlivable, which you corrected after, is not correct. So
Okay, ignore the unlivable because I corrected that. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So jizya is, according to a lot of scholars, and one of the biggest scholars, that even ISIS, right, calls upon like to justify all of their shit which they twist, is Ibn Taymiyyah. And according to him, jizya is for people living under Sharia law is actually less than the tax that the Muslims pay. And the jizya itself is a protection of sorts, a protection tax or tax, right? So people pay it. So you have like a group of, I don't know, you live in a country under Sharia law, and you have like, I don't know, 1,000 Bonellis or whatever in your country, right? And they have to pay jizya, so you protect them from other Dans and Mr. Mutens and whatever, right? You protect them in war, you protect them, you give them protection, you give them their judicial system and whatever. And it's actually less than the normal tax that the Muslims pay. And also, who pays it? You said every non-Muslim pays it. That's not correct. Only people pay it that are actually eligible to go to war. If they go to war, they don't have to pay it. But if they refuse to go to war with Muslims, they can pay that tax, which is less than the Muslims pay, in order for the Muslims to protect them.
All I know is just historically the way that
Wait,
played
hello?
out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
I heard a banging. Sorry, never mind. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's less than Muslims pay, and it's for their protection, and no one is forced to convert because the jizya is so taxing to them.
So definitely, see, this is where we run into an issue. No one is forced to convert, but you just imagine that the government decides, hey, listen, to all non-Christian people, we're imposing a tax on you, like 100%. You got to pay a tax called the jizya, or whatever we would decide to.
Wait,
name
what
it.
is that?
Who's banging on his microphone?
Oh shit.
It's not me.
I have autistic nephews. He's upstairs. He's like stomping.
Oh, okay. It sounds like you're just tapping on your mic, but that's what it is. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, he jumps.
Yeah.
He starts,
so what the
scripting.
other guy was saying was that it sounds like you have. Do you know what a tithe is?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know exactly.
Yeah. So it sounds like all the Muslims pay a tithe, and if you're not a Muslim, then they basically like tax you a tithe that would be lower than what a Muslim would pay anyway. That's what it sounds like. So.
Yeah. So
And also, do Muslims in the US right now pay tax or no?
yeah, sure.
Okay,
But-
so everyone
but
pays
that-
taxes
no,
in
that's
a
different.
state.
No,
And
there's a
is
difference. There's a
and
difference.
Sharia is
There's a
not it's not
difference.
just a religious system; it's a political system. Islam is a political.
But right, well, because the Quran is very much a political as well as spiritual. Like it has political injunctions as well as spiritual injunctions. Like it has both, whereas the Christian faith does not. One, two. There's a difference. Like Destiny, there would be one thing if it's like, hey, we're all going to pay tax. We're going to pay tax regardless. But in addition to regular tax, you're going to pay the non-Christian tax. Well,
That's not true though. They don't pay in addition to the
They
normal
don't
tax.
pay
They
the
pay the
Mus- the
jizya.
Muslim tithe
They
at
just
all.
pay the
Yeah.
They just pay the jizya. That's it.
I'm
That's all they're
looking
paying.
up.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, I know for a fact in Kosovo they 100% imposed the jizya tax, and the jizya tax had a humongous impact on why the people converted to the Islam faith. 100%, that happened.
Yeah, okay, we can look it up if you want. I mean,
Alright,
like I said, I named you.
that's a
I named
fact.
you.
But
I
see,
named you
I
one of
don't-
the. I'm sorry, I named you one of the biggest scholars, which even ISIS used to justify their shit, right? And he even says himself that jizya, according to his interpretation and the interpretation of a lot of scholars, is actually less than the tax normal Muslims pay under Sharia law, right? So I mean, just source me that in Kosovo people.
I'm gonna. I don't actually know, and I actually feel bad even bringing this up. I know when I was studying a little bit of the Armenian shit and all the people that lived under Muslim rule, I thought I read something similar that there were unique taxes that were imposed into minority groups that kind of made their businesses uncompetitive. But I would have to source this up. I feel like I've read this
did
before.
happen. that did happen in Kosovo specifically. It 100%. And again, I don't have all the history. Like I could. That's why I said it's not something that I feel as confident in. Like you ask me anything biblical, and it's like, okay, I know it. I read it. I read it actively. That's different.
Well, yeah,
I don't claim in any way, shape, or form to be a scholar, but I would say that you're being disingenuous if you're trying to indicate that the jizya did not influence people just converting to Islam. Like,
well, I'm explaining you the jizya from an Islamic standpoint, and that's all I'm doing right here, right?
Yeah, I got you. But then would you agree with the fact that the jizya influenced a large amount of individuals to convert to Islam? That the tax.
Yeah, if you show me the numbers, I would agree. I'm not delusional. I agree with numbers, right? I agree with stats and I agree with facts. If you show me the source, I'm saying they use the jizya in a non-Islamic way, which is, according to scholars, not the correct way to tax non-Muslims in a state. And then I mean,
let me look it up. I'm gonna look it up. A second.
And stop spamming gachigos, guys, when I say jizya. It's not.
Yeah, I'm reading here where it says further reading suggests that the jizya had to be paid in addition to, not instead of, the zakat. But I'm not particularly well versed on that. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying earlier. The zakat is the zakat is the tax that the Muslims pay.
Correct.
And in certain instances, the jizya had to be paid in addition to the zakat.
The zakat only Muslims pay.
Right, and I'm saying
non-Muslims don't pay zakat.
But in certain instances, they did.
They paid zakat and jizya.
Zakat and jizya in Kosovo.
According to what source? I mean, I believe you if you link me the source, because it's the first time I had it.
Let me see. Copy. And this is just like the first link that came up to. Where's this? Where are you at?
Just post it in general chat or whatever. General might boot or.
Where's general chat at?
Just scroll up a little bit and there are text channels.
Here. I got it simply. Boom. Yeah, so let me see.
You could cheese the boss a little bit. Just damage him and then he becomes invulnerable, and then you just pot out and wait for the invulnerable phase to finish,
really?
and then go back in. Yeah. You can do that. It's like 5 times or something you have to do it. It's pretty safe that way.
That sounds unethical.
I mean, you don't believe in ethics, right? So you shouldn't have a problem with
But
that.
I do believe in SSF hardcore ethics.
Damn.
Yeah, after attaining victory at the Battle of Kosovo, 1389, the Ottoman Empire imposed Islamic rule on the region. Conversion was not obligatory, but had several financial, social, and political benefits. Until the 16th century, the degree of Islamization in Kosovo was minimal and largely confined to urban centers. The pace of conversion to Islam only increased significantly in the second half of the 16th century, possibly because converts
You should try to have a chat with someone like Sarah Haider or Mohammed Syed from
tax levied only on
ex-Muslims of North America.
By 1634,
I think it would be a very interesting discussion for your destiny.
A minority remained Catholic.
Imtiaz Shams
Besides
is
the
another
ethnic Albanians and the
ex-Muslim,
ruling
but
Turks
he's a
who settled
bum.
in Kosovo,
They
the
are
Roma
all
and some
on
part of the
Twitter.
Slavic-speaking population, later called the Bosniaks and or Gorani, to distinguish them from the Orthodox Serbs, also became Muslim. By far, most of the Sunni, although a small minority of Shia Muslims, formed in the countryside. By the end of the 17th century, the Islamic population started to outnumber the Christians.
Okay. So, in that paragraph, Noah, did it say that non-Muslims had to pay zakat and jizya at the same time? So that point was either in another article or.
Sure. I didn't say it was always. I didn't say that always happened. I said in some specific cases, and furthermore,
and also it didn't say anything about the jizya being like unbearable, or I don't know.
I did read the part where it said conversion was not obligatory, but had several financial, social, and political benefits. I did read that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you are Muslim, you have to pay the zakah instead of jizya, which is either the same, according to some scholars, or less, according to other scholars, right? I mean,
but that's in conjunction with other benefits as well. And it did say the pace of conversion to Islam only increased significantly in the second half of the 16th century, possibly because converts thus became exempt from the jizya, a tax levied only on non-Muslim. It said that too. Is that not enough?
Of course, yeah. Jizya, the Muslims don't pay jizya; they pay zakat. I mean, I don't see how this article really helps your point that much. I mean,
All right,
I don't see.
real quick,
let me just...
let's get our final arguments in here because I hate religious people and you're both pissing me off, right? So get your final memes in here. Go for it.
All right. So really quickly, all I'm saying is that the jizya in that specific regard, 100% definitely influences people into converting into to the Muslim faith.
Okay.
I'm saying that it definitely does have that influence. And historically, this has happened, specifically in Kosovo.
Okay, I mean, that article you read, though, didn't really support your point that much because it didn't say anything about the jizya being higher than the zakat or...
It didn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
All right. Yeah, I mean, okay. My final point is Destiny, repent or perish.
Jeez.
That's pretty much it.
Wow.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
hey,
thanks,
buddy,
guys.
thanks for having the talk.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't come off like as like abrasive or aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think we
again,
disagree. We disagree like on like a fundamental point, but it would take hashing out probably like a lot of philosophical concepts to get there. Because the point that we really disagree on is that you seem open to fact-based things, and I'm open to fact-based things. It just is going to come down to whether or not we feel that the text itself is important or the act of the followers. And I mean, to be honest, I think there are arguments on both sides that are worth considering, and I could be persuaded for one or the other, but yeah.
Sure. All right.
Cool.
Man, it was really, really nice talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. I've been trying to have this specific conversation with you for quite some time.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks, buddy. Good luck with all your stuff. Have fun.
Yep.
Thanks for dragging me in, Destiny.
Yeah.
And chat, let's get a 50 Napa combo.
It's not happening. Get out of here.
Okay, bye.
All right. See you later.
All right. Peace.